The next few days had passed mostly without incident, being broken only by messengers handing off a few things. They had received word that Tom was indeed on the mend and walking about by now. The reports of his physical condition weren't great, but his head at least seemed okay. He had grown rather weak in addition to developing a kind of trembling. Apparently, even drinking a glass of water without spilling was a challenge for him at the moment. That was what the stuff sent with Tigran was for, though, and it sounded like Jarix would be back in the sky just in time for them all to meet up at home. Ray had been left in the caring hands of Heiko for the day, as they were going to be heading to the academy. They had rented a room for her, much to her protest. She claimed that she could sleep on the floor just fine. Dakota hadn't budged, though, so she had her own room, and they had all put together a little pocket change for her, for drinks or whatever else she might fancy. Micah was following along as they made their way to the academy, his head still on a swivel all the way there. They had clearly been expected, the guard letting them inside and urging them to take a seat in the lobby at some rather nice tables and chairs. It didn't take long before Lynn Costa came skipping into the large room. She beckoned them over with a hand wave as she turned to head wherever it was they were going. It wouldn't do to run in a place like this, but Lynn Costa was not slowing down for them, so it took a bit to catch up. "My, you were in a hurry today," Sapphire jested as she caught up. "Yeah, this is going to be so exciting. Hopefully your guy doesn't pass out too soon. Do you think I can have a chat too?" "I mean, I don't think we have even tried to put the earrings on him yet, have we?" Sapphire questioned, looking back to Dakota, who was catching up too. "No, it might not even work. In that case, we will just get the Nook to relay." "How do yours work? Are they like talking to each other or more intimate? What about other senses? Can you hear them?" "Just talking, I'm afraid," Dakota interrupted, before the list of questions got too long. "Oh, beans. I was hoping for an in-depth look. Is Shiny promised to let me have a go at him, if he can take it, of course." "Well, the dude doesn't sleep much and he just tends to keep going, so maybe," Sapphire tried in reply. They knew nothing of Tom's magical abilities or endurance. Hell, he might not even have any at all, but she guessed they were about to find out. Yes, I know. That's not the same and you know it," Lancaster dismissed her, as they made their way up a few flights of stairs, eventually arriving at a rather innocuous-looking door which Lancaster knocked on in code. Either that, or she just hadn't given up the habit. The door swung open, seemingly of its own accord. Lancaster stepped inside with a little skip. "Right, they are here." Stepping inside, it looked like some kind of personal suite. It didn't look an awful lot like an office, though there was a writing desk up against one of the walls. There were some comfortable-looking chairs and a single sofa, the rest of the space being taken up by a large workbench surrounded by shelves of odd items and jars of who knows what. "Thank you, Lancaster. Please make yourselves comfortable," Lady Ashani replied, gesturing towards the seating, looking to all of them. "I heard Tom made it through." "He's a little worse for wear, but they are confident he will live, yes," Dakota answered. "Oh, I was under the impression that he had made an almost full recovery," the lady questioned, seemingly a tad confused. "The experience has taken a toll. Medicines and remedies to alleviate this have been sent to the keep, though. We are hoping they will counteract most of the negative effects." "Lancaster, I want you to write down all of his symptoms later. That is valuable information. Anyways, the tea is fresh. Help yourselves. May I see the earring?" Dakota took off the precious little earring, handing it over to the lady who sat down with it at her working desk, seemingly setting about inspecting it. Lancaster served them tea as a slightly awkward silence formed. Lancaster clearly very interested in what the lady was doing. "Did you hear we are getting a few new people at the keep?" Sapphire opened, looking to break the silence. "Really? No, I didn't. Sounds like you could use a hand, though," Lancaster replied, snapping her head back to look at them. "Oh yeah, things are crazy at the moment. We could use you too," Balathon interjected. "Of course you can. I'm very useful," Lancaster replied jokingly. "Careful now. You don't want to beat Jackie's ego," Dakota added with a chuckle, before looking back to the lady. "Oh please, the mighty Jackalope Furlong, with all the finesse of her mother's favourite hammer." "Don't let either of them hear that," Sapphire gestured in return. She could only imagine the results, though Lancaster would likely pull some trick out of her sleeve to distract, long enough to get ready for a fight. "Yes, I know what these are," Lady Ashani interrupted, seemingly quite pleased with herself. "They were made by Theron a few years back. Interesting they ended up in such unsavoury company that quickly. They don't seem to have been altered, though, so they should be perfectly safe to use." "Well, that's a relief," Balathon let out. Sapphire didn't much care. Of course they were safe. They had used them many times, and a puma had said so. With your permission? The lady questioned, looking to Dakota. By all means. A-S-U-R? I can't tell, Tom admitted, as Lady Deriva moved the blackboard tablet further away. Fuck, you really are blind, Jackie let out. That's an H. You can't read, right? Yes, Jackie, I can read. It's just a little blurry, okay? And my hands won't stop shaking. It's really fucking annoying. We are hoping the things Tigwan is carrying will help. I wish it's going to be hell to get you back in shape, the Nook replied, with all the empathy of a military nurse. But you can't do it, right? Even if the meds don't work? Jackie questioned anxiously. Tom had never seen her so sad in victory as after she wiped the floor with him earlier, in just about every exercise they could think of. It was probably the ease with which she had done so, rather than actually beating him, that was the cause, though. I can, but it will take forever. The damage is everywhere. That is what such remedies are for. In a sense, you were quite lucky that we were able to sneak it in under Esmeralda's care. These kinds of things are expensive, the Nook replied, before going silent and looking at the floor, closing her eyes for a bit. Right, Tom, time for your little meeting. Do try to be nice. Remember she can hear your thoughts, but she can't go looking, so to speak, the Nook continued, as she started taking off the earring. Okay then, do I just put them on, or what exactly? Yes, you... Hang on. Oh, gods damn it, why haven't you? Oh, you have got to be joking, the Nook let out, clearly frustrated. You don't have an ear punch, do you? She questioned, looking towards Lady Deriva. I think so. Oh, right. Luke, would you mind fetching it? I think it's down in the crafts hall with the leather-working tools. Luke dutifully obeyed his mother, scampering down the stairs. What? Tom questioned. He didn't like the sound of that, not one bit, in fact. You need holes in your ears. You can't put holes in your ears, right? The Nook questioned, seemingly growing a tad doubtful. Tom honestly considered lying and claiming it couldn't be done. Can't I just, hold them or something? Maybe put them in my ear for the time being? I don't know, actually, the Nook admitted. 1 second. She closed her eyes for a few moments before looking back at him. Apparently not. Is it a problem for you to have a hole in your ear? Not really, Tom admitted. He wasn't much for the idea. Then again, he actually really wanted to try out that earring, not to mention the person who would be on the other end was apparently rather important and worked with magic. Fine, I'll do it. Does it hurt? As it turned out, yes, it did hurt. Quite a bit, in fact. Tom was fairly sure this wasn't the right tool for the job, at least not for a human, but the parts did its job and the Nook stopped the bleeding. None of that stopped Jackie from giving him a bit of shit for being a pussy. Fengi even joined in, much to his displeasure. Right, so how do I, speak? Tom questioned, after having the earring put in. Just sit back, relax, and close your eyes. Otherwise they'll be left open, which is unpleasant afterward. Then you push the slider on the side of the earring down. To get back out, push it back up. You will lose your senses, so just be wary of that, but you can still move. Okay, Tom replied, slightly nervously, as he leaned back into Jackie, lacking a better backrest sitting on a bench as he was. The little metal slide was pushed, and the world went dark. He could neither smell nor hear anything, and even the light coming through his eyelids was gone. He could still move, though, just like the Nook said, so that was something. Hello? He tried. Yes, hello. I take it you got it to work? An unfamiliar voice replied. It sounded a tad strange, kind of like it was distorted a bit or something. It was definitely a woman, though. Yes. This is kind of weird. Oh, then you should try some of the more exotic variants. Tasting a Mary can be quite the experience. Anyway, we two have quite a few things to discuss. Tom had to ponder that reply for a second as to whether that was something he wanted to try someday. Oh, yes, is this like one question each, then repeat kind of deal? He questioned, getting back to the matter at hand. If you wanted to be, then sure. I take it you have questions too, then. Awesome. Yeah, I've got plenty. I ended up with a unicorn horn. What can that do? That is a very powerful artifact indeed. Are you sure that it's, yours? I think technically it's Zarko's. She doesn't strike me as particularly interested, though. Right now it's being guarded by Jarek's. Well, if I tell you, then you are going to have to answer my questions truthfully. Sure, as long as you don't go babbling about everything to people who shouldn't know. I can keep secrets. I have quite a few, in fact. First question, then. Where are you actually from? The Kingdom of Denmark. Right. Which is where? In the northern part of Europe. I think we might be missing each other a little bit. I know what the reports state about your origin. Where are you from? The lady reiterated, growing a touch firmer in her tone. This very much so constitutes do not tell information. I figured as much since you haven't been telling the truth. I will only be relaying whether your origin is of concern to us. Right, screw it. I'm guessing you could just force it out of me in time if I don't tell. Tom had heard the retelling of just how they had cracked one of the two mercenaries. It didn't sound like a fate he wanted to share. It might be arranged. Okay then. Tom gave the full rundown on how he had ended up here, and what his thoughts were on the subject of going back and forth, mainly that there was no way he knew of how to do it. The lady had not actually posed any questions that led to major problems. Tom had simply answered as truthfully as possible, making sure to avoid leading her on to just how different their worlds were. All in all, questions like, do you have a king or queen, or how many people are there in your world, were not a problem. Even if she apparently thought nearly 6 million was a decent amount of people, despite Tom giving it as the population of his homeworld rather than just Denmark. The concept of countries apparently did not really translate well. As long as he didn't mention other countries, it should work just fine though. On the subject of his mysterious benefactor that had sent him here, she drew a blank too. She didn't know how anyone could open portals to another world like that. Apparently the magic existed, and with sufficient preparation, she could even perform it herself. That was only between pre-prepared points in this world though, of which there were precious few, not to mention the cost of conducting such a spell. Now, I've been very forthcoming, so tell me, what does this magic ivory stick do? There was a bit of a reluctant pause before she replied. A unicorn's horn is the source of both its telekinetic, telepathic, and teleportation abilities. It can be used in many applications, such as my teleportation spell. I am in possession of a horn that was gifted to the Academy many generations ago for that very purpose. It can also serve as a booster for natural abilities in that field. A small amount of powdered horn can also be used in enchanting to greatly increase an enchantment's potency. It is also rumoured that it holds the power to lift the curse of the dark, though I know of no one who has attempted to prove it, successful or not. That's quite something. I'm going to hazard a guess that the reason you didn't want to tell me is because you want it. Don't be daft, of course I do. But if it was given to this second Lieutenant Zarko, then it is hers by law. To defy the will of a unicorn is heresy. As long as no laws are broken by the unicorn, I do believe the sentence is death for that one. Well, we kind of just asked, hey, we found this, may we keep it? To which she said yes. In fact, it was a condition that she would never see it again. In that case, I would claim it's a trophy of the battle, though both the Royal Guard and 2 keeps could technically lay claim to it at that point. I propose a deal. I support your claim to the horn in exchange for the opportunity to have it studied. I want to know if it is any way different to the one in my possession. How does that sound? Hey, I'm not really that worried about who ends up with it, but if it helps the keep, then I wanted to stay here and so does Anouk, so I'm going to trust that. You've been through enough, and this sounds more than a little useful. It could also draw more enemies to your doorstep. I would advise caution. Tom had to give her that. Was it worth it? If it could enhance magical abilities, then by how much? Maybe a puma could use it for some crazy shit. Hell, a shield is sort of telekinetic. That doesn't sound like something I can decide. I will trust Anouk. Deriva Keep is not in a position to lay claim to it if the reports of the battle are anything to go by. You are certain that Zarko does not want to lay claim to it? She didn't even want to touch. I don't think she has yet, actually. Well, if it does end up staying at Bismarti Keep, then I would request the opportunity to have it examined in detail there. Luckily, I have a young assistant who specialises in ritual magic, just like her father, with a tendency to note everything down. You may tell Nanook her daughter is coming home for a few months. Okay, I don't think that would be a problem. Could you perhaps, try to make it sound like the horn isn't here? That might help, actually. There we go. I was told you could be a deceitful little guy. I reckon that would be wise. I don't want you overrun and the horn stolen. I will discuss this further with the Royal Guard. I believe they have a sizable contingent heading your way. Sounds great. Not to be a party killer, but I'm not feeling so hot. Another time, maybe? Well, I guess it's your first time using these. I got most of what I wanted anyway. I will... Tom didn't listen for the full reply. He felt sick again as he clicked off the earring, the world shooting back into existence, and his eyes shooting open. That was a little quick, Fengi questioned, looking concernedly at Tom. Yeah, I feel sick. Oh, come on. I told him you would last longer than her for sure, Jackalope protested. Yeah, not my best day thus far. Ugh. Tom shivered a bit as the nausea thankfully began to slowly subside. He had just expected to feel tired like the Nook or the others when they used the earrings. Then again, he was hardly in top condition at the moment, so that might have something to do with it. He wanted to ask more questions, but right now, though, he just felt like he should be in bed. The lady had come out of her trance, sitting there quietly, thoughtful for a second or two, before looking up. "Lancaster, time for your first field assignment. They have a unicorn's horn in their possession, which I doubt they are willing to relinquish. If what you have told of your mother is correct, she will want to keep it, and I fear she might have the final word in it. You are to study this horn in detail. I want notes on every crack and imperfection." "But field assignments are next semester," Lancaster questioned cautiously. "I am well aware. Consider it a favour. Dakota, I trust this won't be a problem for you or your mother?" "I couldn't imagine so. It would be lovely to have Lancaster back, even if only for a bit." "Excellent. You'll be paid the small fee for accepting a student for fieldwork. That's the least I can do for this opportunity. When are you planning on departing for home?" "It depends on the length of the trial. It's due to start in a few days now." "Oh yes, I remember. Terrible business. I am correct in assuming the combat wing being dispatched to your keep is hampered by the same limitation?" "Yes, Colonel Victoria Hashore is leading them." "Very well. Expect a little nudge in the right direction then. I want this horn under guard as soon as possible. Lancaster, you are coming with me. You need to study the horn in our possession." "Yes, of course," Lancaster replied, seemingly still struggling a bit with what just happened. She certainly didn't seem disappointed that she didn't get to talk with Tom, so Sapphire guessed that she just needed a bit of time. The whole nudge in the right direction sounded just fine to Sapphire. She wouldn't have minded departing right away, but they needed to get the bitch first. That was why they had come here, after all. The lady had departed with Lancaster, letting them know they were free to go, though they were more than welcome to enjoy the tea. They loitered a bit, before finding their own way out. Much to Sapphire's amazement, they weren't even assigned guards as they walked the corridors of the legendary building, doing a little sightseeing, though being careful not to get themselves lost. They couldn't stay long, though, since they had other places to be today. The Flaxlands had sent a messenger the day before, saying that they had managed to scrounge together the agreed-upon amount ahead of schedule. They had swum by the Traders Guild to pick up Volson and the majority of his escorts to help transport the goods in question. Archon had decided to tag along too, just in case, which at the very least meant they had the firepower to persuade the Flaxlands not to do something stupid if necessary. It meant less heavy lifting too, though Sapphire was a tad conflicted on feeling happy she didn't need to lift large amounts of very valuable cargo. It felt a touch selfish. Outside the Flaxland mansion, Baron was sitting on his haunches, looking as stately as possible, glaring at the Flaxland guards stationed outside. They had all disembarked and made their way inside with both Volson's escorts and 4 Flaxland guards. When they made it to the armory, Victoria and Lady Hashore were already there, and in the process of going over the contents. It was an underground basement-like structure, though it did have a rather tall ceiling. Most of the stuff down here was clearly either for their guards or slightly finer equipment for their family members, the latter often being very lavishly decorated. The interesting stuff, though, was stored inside a vault that had already been opened. Several sets of extremely fine armor were currently in the process of being removed, so they could have a closer look at them. "How do we know which is the best one?" Sapphire whispered to Dakota as they walked up to the scene, flanked by all their guards. "We asked the two who know," Dakota replied, looking to Lady Hashore and Victoria, who were accompanied by a few of their own guards. "Ah, good of you to join us," Lady Hashore broke out as she noticed them approaching. "Dakota, was it?" "Yes, ma'am," Dakota replied with a polite nod. "Terribly sorry, I'm bad with names. I believe your mother's armor is a set of full plate and that lovely winged helmet, with some rather nice impact mitigation, correct?" "Indeed, though it also protects against extreme temperatures." "Ah, yes, the old lady did like to feel comfy even in battle. The padding must be wonderful too," Lady Hashore reminisced, almost like she had known the Nook's grandmother. "Anyway, Dakota, would you be looking for a set yourself, or perhaps for your brother?" Looking over the sets, they did have a set that was clearly for a male, seemingly very heavily protected, at least judging by the thickness of the pauldrons. "Perhaps. What enchantments does that carry?" "Only the basics, I'm afraid. Always a shame to waste so much good metal on such a poor job," Lady Hashore replied, seemingly genuinely saddened by it. "That one, though, that is a masterpiece," she continued, pointing towards a very sizable suit. "And not one built for display or ceremony either." "Well, that certainly won't fit Prajschet," Sapphire let out, moving up to look more closely at the set. In fact, she didn't think it would fit any of them. "Yes, unfortunately it's rare to find a warrior who will fit it. Kalbedar was truly a beast on the battlefield." "Wait, Kalbedar Furlong?" Sapphire had to question. "Yes, indeed. Such a shame what happened to them. Apparently some of them are still out there. I think one of her daughters made it, though. What was her name?" "Shiva," Dakota replied. She's our smith. She'll be reciting the set we bring home. She and her daughter Jackalope have been at our keep for over 2 decades by now.
Is she now?
The lady replies, seeming rather delighted by the news.
Well, talk about a match made in heaven. I would have wanted it for my own collection, though if it might actually end up being used, that's far better. Buy an actual furlong of that.
How did it even end up here? Shouldn't that have gone to the family? Sapphire questioned, looking over the armour in more detail. Hold-out daggers. Nice.
The furlongs accrued a rather substantial debt to defend their home, rather than leave it.
The armour was auctioned off long before the final battle for the keep even took place. An elderly male Flaxen clarified for them, clearly not pleased with today's agenda. The other armour sets had been presented to them by the elderly Flaxen man, who was often swiftly cut off by Lady Hashore to give them the proper story of the armour in question. One of the sets was over 600 years old, having been meticulously maintained for centuries, and a very nice set too at that, if perhaps more made for ceremony than battle. In the end, the choice came down to those three: the furlong armour, which was clearly the most impressive, the rather poor set that would be fit for a chook, and the old armour, which was definitely the most valuable if they wanted to sell it. I think we are good on the money front. We need the armour. I'm the only woman trained to fight in armour, but I have my mother's armour. Jackie is a menace with a good hammer, but that would mean only she and her mother can use it. She has no training fighting like that at all.
Well, then you better get her some then. She's a furlong. It's damn near law for them,
Lady Ashore interrupted, sounding almost offended by the knowledge Jackie was trained as a huntress. We could also get that set to put Tom in it, Balathon went, pointing to the ancient set. He doesn't know one word of fighting in melee apart from a bit of brawling. And look at the legs, it wouldn't work at all. No. Jackie can learn. She loves sparring as it is, and it's just a step up from what she's used to. Richard will have to buy me on this. We are taking that one, Dakota declared, pointing at the furlong armour. Sapphire was a little sad there was no way she would fit that. She wanted to interject that she could probably fit the old armour without too much trouble. It would likely mess with her archery and airworthiness quite a bit, though. Then again, she could only imagine the results of putting Jackie in a suit of enchanted armour. It sounded like it was technically Shiva's armour. At least it should have been, had things gone differently. What about weapons? Dakota questioned, turning to the elderly Flaxen. With an annoyed grunt, the old man had reluctantly started bringing out boxes, staring daggers at them all the while. They were quite the assortment of different weapons, mostly blades though, which would be a problem for Jackie. She was really best with a hammer or mace of some kind. They had a talon blade nearly identical to the Nook sword, in addition to a very nice rapier that was apparently capable of piercing just about anything. In the end, they went for a very nice arming sword, which looked about the right size for a chook. That way he at least wouldn't be entirely forgotten, not to mention he was likely the finest sword fighter at the keep, even rivaling his mother, she was past her prime by now. The blade was supposed to have some very intricate inertia-based magic, much like what was found in all but a few sets of enchanted armour. A quick test confirmed that the blade was indeed way heavier than it felt. It was honestly a surreal experience, as Dakota delicately knocked it against Sapphire's braces. It was light and nimble, almost to the point where it felt like a toy, but it could brush a parry aside with sheer force if the enemy wasn't ready for it. When do I get something like this? Sapphire questioned jokingly, as he put the blade back in his sheath, content that they had made the right decision. Well, if you are diligent in scribbling away your savings and not spending them on beer and jewellery, who knows? Your grandchildren might, Dakota replied with a chuckle. What about you, Maiko? Do you dream of a blade like this at night too? If Victoria decides I'm to be promoted for once, I might be able to afford one someday, he replied with a chuckle. Not with that attitude you won't, Victoria replied, as she and her mother picked out the rapier for their part. Walking out of the Flaxen mansion carrying more gold than Sapphire had ever seen in her lifetime, did make her very happy to hand it off to the big 18-ton dragon with a knack for money. Baron was likewise loaded up with what the Hashores had gotten. With a few friendly greetings and farewells exchanged with Baron and his crew, they had made for the Traders Guild to store the loot away, somewhere nice and safe.